Okay, so we just finished preparing this USAF 1951 resolution test pattern. Now let's begin a new drawing, and we'll just use a standard template. We haven't made one yet, and we'll have to reposition re-prepare our drawing. Let's again go to block unit format, 2 millimeters, apply an OK, and we'll again make a drawing boundary that will be the size of the 10 by 12 inch sheet. In millimeters, that will be a lower left corner of 0, 0, and an upper right corner of 304.8, 254 millimeters. Let's turn our grid on, so we can see again these half millimeter units. We'll snap for the moment. Just so we can see our page, let's first draw a large rectangle that spans the entire page from 0 to here we can again hit D and enter for defining the dimensions. Horizontal is 304.8, vertical is 254, and again use our scroll wheel to see where the bounds are. Again, if you push down the scroll wheel, you can pan. Okay, now we see our entire page. You can also double click the scroll wheel, and that will zoom to the extent of your drawing. Okay, so this is our drawing. And let's now think about layers. So it's very useful to have a layer for construction lines and a layer for the printouts. Now we by default have a layer that's called 0. And you see the layers in this element over here under the properties. It says 0. And that's all we have right now. So let's modify these a little bit. Let's go to Format, Layer. And you see all we have for one layer. This is a white color. Let's change it. Let's make it a little bit dimmer by specifying that it can be some shade of gray, just so doesn't stand out quite so much. And let's make a new layer. We'll call it Layer. And we will make this, let's make it green. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, this is our 10 by 12 inch sheet. We need to have our printouts with a half-inch border. Let's say it's roughly 15 millimeters. And so we want to lay out our roughly 4-inch wafers. Well, since we're using millimeters, let's say it's a 100 millimeter diameter. And so we've clicked on the circle tool. The center point, we want it to be centered, let's say the radius will be half of 100 or 50. We want the border to be 15 millimeters from the end, so we simply add 50 and 15. That gives us 65. So our center point could be 65 by 65. And you can see down over here at the bottom, you see your dimensions of the cursor. We could try to line up 65, 65, but we can also just type it in. 65, 65. There we go. And again, we want it to be 50 millimeters in radius. We can just type it in 50. Okay, good. So here is our first mask position, and we should be able to get 5 masks on here. So let's now copy this element. We can click it. We can type the word copy. Again, we also could go up onto the right toolbar, and up here you see copy. And so we can take any point. We could snap to the center point, or we can simply say we want to displace it vertically. And I'd say it'd be good to have a 20 millimeter distance between the two. So again, 50 plus 20 would be a horizontal displacement of 0 and a vertical displacement of 70 millimeters. So let's just type D for displacement, 0, 70, enter. I clearly made a mistake here. I actually should have displaced it by 100 millimeters plus 20. So let's move it up 50 more millimeters. We can click it, we can type move or select the move icon, and here we'll do displacement again, D, enter, 0,50. Okay, that's what I intended to do in the first place. Now the next thing to do is to figure out how else we should copy these. Let's select them both, copy, and we want to move them now horizontally. So here I've clicked on the center point of the bottom one. You see I'm moving both together. And if I hit shift, I've now constrained the movement to be horizontal or vertical. And let's just give an approximate distance right now. We'll clean it up a little bit later. Let's say about here. So left click, and we've made our copy. And now somewhere in the middle, it looks like we'll just barely have enough room for another one. So let's take a look at our center point here, 234.5 and 65. Now if we want to measure the distance between these two center points, we can go to Tools, Inquiry, and Get Distance. We can hover over the center point. And we may have to move the cursor to some part on the edge of the circle that will make the center point pop up. And we can click that point. We'll do the same over here. Now we see that our center points are exactly 169.5 millimeters apart. Not a very round number, so let's move it over by half a millimeter, and then we can put our middle circle right in the center. Okay, let's move it by again hitting move, displacement D, enter, 0.5, 0, we'll move it over to the right half a millimeter. Couldn't even detect that. But now we know how to displace another unit. So let's copy this one, and we'll do displacement again. Now, going all the way was 170, so we're going to move it over by 85 millimeters. And again, we should have, the upper row is 120 millimeters above, so 60 would be half of that. So we'll do 85, 60, and we should get this right exactly in the middle. And if you look around the edge, you can see we have a pretty good border. Should be at least a half inch all the way around. That's great. Okay, so let's focus on one of these for now, and let's draw some guidelines. So we can use our line tool, and here let's snap to the upper, let's make a vertical line all the way through this, all the way through, and you can see like you can keep clicking lines, they'll all be linked together. If you hit escape, then you will just be left with the line that you've clicked. Okay, now let's learn about a command called offset. What offset does is it will take any element and it will make another element that is offset in one direction or another from the line by a fixed value. And that is this element up here, this icon, or you can type offset. Now that's for distance. How far do we want to offset? In this case, what we want to do is divide up this 4-inch wafer, this 100 millimeter circle, into 20 millimeter squares. So we'll type 20, enter, and it asks for which side should the destination. We'll hit B for both sides, and you can see it's copied that exactly 20 millimeters apart. Now I can keep going. I can click now this one on the side, and click on the right side. And I've duplicated it again exactly 20 millimeters away. Click on the left one, click to the left, and we've scaled it again. And we'll hit escape to exit the offset command. Now let's select all of these and make a copy by rotating them. Now, unlike this, the mirror command, as we used last time, which will ask you whether you want to make a copy, the rotate command does not do that. So here what we need to do is we need to actually make a copy. And we will say our displacement is 0, 0 to make it a true copy. Now we'll click once on each of these to select one group of them, and then we'll select rotate. We'll select the center of the circle and some vertical position. Okay, so now we have a nice grid. And what you see here is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20 by 20 millimeter squares all fitting nicely and using up most of the area of this 4-inch wafer. And we don't want to get too close to any of the edges because we'll have some thicker photoresist there that won't pattern as well. So now let's zoom into one of these corners. Let's make a rectangle. Again, we can just snap to those edges. I'm going to now select just that element, and I'm going to move it to our new print layer. So we can do that down here. We can select print layer and escape. And now you see it turn green because now it's on the print layer. Now, up at the top you see this bar that has the layer, print layer, and a couple of icons. You can lock it, you can freeze it, or you can display it. So here we can turn off. This is the green light means that the layer is displayed. We can hide the active layer. Now you see only our print layer. And you can turn these on and off. So that's the use of layers. You can lock them so they can't move, and you can turn them on and off as you will. Now the last thing I like to do before I go on is I like to actually have a printed border around each of my squares, which will become a single device perhaps. So let's use our offset command again. We will select our distance to be 0.1 millimeters. We'll select our print square and both sides, and we zoom in closely, and then select the middle one. Actually, we're done with offset. We'll select the middle one, and now we will delete it. So now we only have printed a 200 micron wide square. Now within this square we can begin to construct our microfluidic pattern. So the first thing I'd like to do is make some more construction lines. So let's actually make one in the center of the device, from the top to the bottom. And we'll do the same in the horizontal dimension. Again, I'm looking for these triangles that signify the midpoint. Zoom in a little bit closer. You can see now the snapping to the grid actually is interfering with snapping to the object. So let's turn off the snap to grid for a moment. And now we can more easily select the midpoint with the square. Okay, so our goal here is to create a microfluidic pattern, a microfluidic droplet generator that has 4 different fluidic inlets. They are composed of a 1 millimeter diameter circle. And now let's snap back again. Our goal is to move now 1, 2, 3, 4 millimeters up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and horizontally we'll go 1, 2, 3. And we'll go 10 millimeters to this side, which I know is going to be this point. Right here. And one last circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I have 4 millimeters vertically, 3 to the left, 10 to the right. As you can see, we're not centered, so we can select these points and we can move them a few millimeters to the side. Okay, let's do M for move, enter, and we will simply displace them. Oops. Let's try it again. Select those 4 circles, move, enter. Displacement will be minus, let's see, 3.5, 0. Alright, so roughly centered now. Okay, I'm going to turn my snap off now. And now what we're going to do is draw some lines between the centers of these elements. And we want to offset them to give them some width. Let's select both of them, offset. Now our total dimension here, we'd like it to be 150 microns wide, so half of that is 0.075, and we'll select our 2 lines. Okay, you can see we've now offset by 150 microns. And now if we zoom into the center, we're going to get a little bit more creative here. We're going to round over these edges and make a narrow constriction in the middle that's only 50 microns wide. So let's take our circle again. We want to make a circle that basically fits within this this pattern over here, kind of in the shape that I'm moving the mouse. We want to make sure the tangents line up with the 2 outer edges of the 150 micron wide channel, as well as this point right here. So here we've got a couple of options. We've been doing a center radius definition, but we can also hit TTT and enter, which allows us to pick 3 lines and makes a circle that's tangent to all of them. So let's click all 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, and there's our circle. So we could do that for the other 3, but we can also use the mirror command, rather the pattern command. So let's give that a try. Pattern. Again, remember we can do a circular pattern. This is looking pretty much like what we'd like to have. What we do need to do is define the axis point, which will be down here. We need to select our entities here, enter, and now we just need to hit OK. Okay, great. Now let's make some new lines in the center of each of these. And again, we're going to take these and offset them. This time we're going to offset them to make a 50 micron wide channel, so half of that is 0.025. We'll select our first line and do both sides, horizontal line on both sides. Okay, so this now has all the shapes we want, but it's kind of a mess. So we need to start deleting some lines. Okay, so the first thing that we'd like to do is we need to do something called trim. We could type trim, or it's these scissors down here. The first thing it asks for are what are the cutting edges. In this case, we want basically everything to be a cutting edge. So let's select everything as a cutting edge. And these are simply lines that when they intersect with something else, they can cut. So we're done selecting cutting edges, and now we specify segments to remove. Okay, here we go. Let's start cutting. So you can simply move around and start cutting out all of the elements that we don't need. So here it's important to make the green circles. Oops, I went too far there. You can always hit U for undo, or Control Z. We'll zoom a little bit closer so I have better control. Okay, now you start to notice some interesting things here. We're not actually able to delete everything. And that's in part because we've actually deleted the cutting lines. So these are now separate lines that we can delete separately later. Okay, let's see, we also have over here and this one at the bottom. Alright, as you can see, depending on the order that you do cutting, now this one there's no cutting line for this element, so we can't actually trim it anymore. But we can simply select it and hit delete. And do the same to clean up the middle here. Delete those, delete those. And now we're looking pretty good. Let's delete some of our construction lines. And let's bring these all now into our print layer. Okay, so I think we're looking pretty good now. The only problem is let's select these lines and see what we have. With 28 elements, we have some arcs and some lines. Now remember, we want to have polylines. So what we can do is we can go to this command called Edit Polyline. Edit Polyline is near the bottom right of the icons. When we click it, it says, we make our command window larger, entity is not a polyline. Do you want to turn it into one? That's the main reason why we're doing this. We'll say yes, and we can now hit X for exit and see what we have. Now we have 28 polylines. Great. But if we look down at this under MISC, we see that they are not closed. We, in principle, could change it to yes, but we don't want to do that. And let me show you why. If we did that, okay, we said yes. Now look what happened. We got some really strange structures that didn't actually link together in the right way. We'll hit Control Z to remove that, and we'll try something different. Let's weld these all together. So we can type the word weld, or use this icon with two arrows pointing together. It first asks for a base entity. We can just pick any of those lines. Then it says specify the ones to weld to that one. Select everything else, and we'll do enter. Now it says 27 segments added to the polyline. So click on it, we see now there's only one polyline, and it is closed. So we're good. We have a single unit. This should now print nicely. We have potentially a microfluidic droplet generator. Now the last thing we should do is give this a label. We always want to put our name and some descriptive feature so that we know when this was made and what the features are. So let's make our simple note rather. We may as well snap to our grid. And I'm going to put it up here. And I'll give it a height of 0.6 millimeters. Text angle 0. This is our microfluidic droplet generator version 1. And I'll put in my name, and I'll put in the date, And let's just say this is 150 micron channel, 50 micron intersection. So it's just descriptive, so we don't need to know exactly what, we don't need to measure it with a microscope, for example. Okay. Now, we want to then, again, have closed polylines. These are simple note elements. We need to convert them. And one way to do that is to type a command called explode text. Okay, now we have a bunch of elements. And let's bring them to the print layer. And as you see, they're now 2D polylines. And they're closed. So these are good. So here's our first microfluidic device. And we're all set. Now before we finish, since we have already made our test pattern, why don't we copy that over? And just for some more practice, let's make a new layer. Let's call it calibration. Let's make it a different color. How about orange? Okay, and now let's go to our pattern. We'll copy that, just Control C. We'll move to our drawing. We will just say Control V, paste. And now we can find a place to put it. Let's just put it down at the bottom. Alright. And let's explode the block. Let's select all these pieces. And let's move it to our calibration there. Okay. And there we go. We've got our calibration pattern. We've got our feature. And in principle, this mask is ready to go.